Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we discuss Ravnica's most competitive tribe and help the whole community become better Merfolk players. I'm Kody, one of the co-hosts of this show, and not Kody Smith on Twitter. But we also have, as of the first time on the show, Rothgar or Roland. How are you doing, Roland?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing all right. Where can we find you in social medias?
Usually, I'm not big on social medias, but I think I have like Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Roland Fernando, and that's pretty much my only online presence apart from grinding Magic online leagues. You can also at me on Discord. I go by Rothgar13 there. Always down to talk fish with people.
Yeah, you're also one of the admins for the subreddit, correct? The Fish MTG subreddit.
That's correct. So I guess Reddit does count.
So that's so. There's lots of places to find Rothgar, and Rothgar's a big person in the community. So thank you to you for showing up on the show. For those of you who are wondering, Matt is on a very important expedition to the central of Texas, and unfortunately, he's in a spot in Texas that's so rural that no communications could be made. So we wish the best of luck to Matt, and hopefully he'll resurface at some point in the future so we can continue having him as a co-host on the show. But thank you in the interim for Roland for showing up and getting ready to talk about our subject matter today, which is the review of the Ravnica Allegiance cards for Merfolk and in all its iterations, modern, legacy, standard, all that fun stuff. But before we go into that, I want to discuss finding our show on the Apple iTunes podcast store and the Google Play podcast app store, as well as Stitcher Radio, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, all those, basically anywhere you could find a podcast. Go ahead and subscribe and rate us there, because that is a great way to help support the show for $0 space bucks. And if you'd like to support us for 50 cents an episode, find us on patreon.com/fishcastmtg and sign up at the $2 level. There you get the show for a few days early and ad-free, and you get to support the show a little bit. So that kind of helps with the upkeep of the servers and all that fun stuff, as well as keeping up gameplay on Twitch at twitch.tv/fishcastmtg, as well as on YouTube at youtube.com/fishcastmtg. So with that out of the way, we're going to go right into our usual pre-topic segment, which is a random Merfolk card. So Rothgar, I'm gonna randomly call you Rothgar. Random points, Roland. I apologize.
That's fine.
You picked random Merfolk number 13, and do you want to go ahead and read that card for us, or do you want me to read it?
Sure, I'll go ahead and read it. We have Bull Hippo. So Bull Hippo is a 3/3 for 3 and a green. Creature type Hippo, has Island Walk. So it kind of harkens to Merfolk in that regard, but its flavor text is not as kind to us in that it says, the Merfolk may rule the waters, but Hippos have never had much respect for authority.
And this is a card from 7th edition. So, I mean, this is, I don't know, it seems like a weird card for like a green card to have Island Walk. I mean, it's flavorful for being a hippo, but like as far as green creatures are concerned, it doesn't seem like Island Walk is something that they normally have.
So this was a bit of a theme, I think, in the late 90s, where they would print, because up until I think Magic 2010, core sets were exclusively reprints. So I think in the late 90s, they were printing several cards like this one, where the way you would hose enemy colors would be either protection from a color, land walk on the opposing color's lands, that sort of thing. So for example, there's a card called River Boa. I'm familiar with this one through Pauper. It's a 1 green 2/1 with Island Walk that regenerates for a green.
Oh yeah,
makes it incredibly annoying for like blue decks.
Yeah, I totally forgot about River Boa. There's another green creature that actually kind of sees play in another format that is a green creature with Island Walk. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean,
better than the protection, I guess.
Yeah, no protection. I can't see this seeing any play. It does have pretty brutal artwork. It's a merfolk getting eaten by a hippo. So if you're into like some weird self-deprecation sort of things, then this might be the card for you. But I don't know about you, Roland, but I don't see this seeing play in any
Yeah.
sort of merfolk deck.
Yeah, it's not gonna cut it.
Plus, at uncommon, you can't even play this in Pauper. Like this is just, ugh, too
Yeah,
much.
draft chap, draft chap.
Yeah, yeah, basically. So we're gonna go into our main topic, which is reviewing both the Merfolk cards from Ravnica Allegiance, as well as the cards that we think might see play in Ravnica Allegiance. And you've, but before we go into that, I wanted to discuss real quick with you, because you are kind of, you know, maybe you don't feel it, but you are kind of a head honcho in the Merfolk community as a community person with the Discord as well as the subreddit. How long have you been playing Merfolk for?
I've been playing Merfolk since about Theros Standard. I kind of got into it because I got into Blue Devotion and Theros Standard, which was fall of 2013, so a while now. Basically, I loved Master of Waves and was looking to like playing it after its standard viability, and the deck that it slotted right into was Merfolk, and I've been a Merfolk player ever since.
You know, actually, that's not an uncommon story. I mean, Tuxdev basically said the same thing. Was like, I saw Master of Waves, and I wanted to play this card, and I started playing right before that in Gatecrash. So, you know, it seems like that was a very good time for Merfolk players to be getting into playing, if not competitively, at least thematically. You know, to Master of Waves is a pretty big catalyst to make Merfolk what it is today.
That's right.
All right, so I wanted to start off with some honorable mentions, and these may not be cards that like I think say maybe wouldn't completely slot into a Merfolk deck, but are cards that we personally think might be good in maybe a fringe playable deck or something along those lines. Do you have a kind of an honorable mention there, Roland?
I think um, there are some cards that come close for me, but don't quite make the cut uh, from Ravnica Allegiance, and most of them are because they're off creature type. So cards like Biomancer's Familiar, um, what was the three? Well, or yeah, Biomancer's Familiar I think is the biggest one, where it enables a lot of like +1/+1 counter shenanigans, which Merfolk and Standard kind of wants to be doing. It's just that having a 2-drop that's off type is really hard to justify when you have so many 2-drops that you want to play that you can't even play them all. You have to like make hard choices.
Yeah, I totally understand. Like there's so many cards in standard currently that have to deal with, at least with Merfolk, and kind of ancillarily +1/+1 counters, and you want it to go that way, but it's kind of hard to justify going full bore into +1/+1 counters. So I get what you're saying, where it's like there's all these cards that feasibly could be in that deck, but you're like, I don't know, maybe this isn't quite where it should be.
Right.
So I get it. There's lots of cards like that kind of are green or blue and kind of tertiarily or halfway deal with +1/+1 counters, but not quite in the way we want them to.
Right. You're looking at it as like I could like splash that, and then like I could splash that too, and then you're like, am I even playing Merfolk anymore?
No, you're just playing a blue green
Yeah.
counters deck at that point, which again isn't bad. It's just maybe not quite. So I actually have a honorable mention here, and that is Rhythm of the Wild.
Ooh, that's spicy.
And so I've been testing this on stream, and so a video is going to be coming out this week. I also tested it during the early access event that we participated in with Wizards sponsorship. So thank you to Wizards for that. So Rhythm of the Wild, for those of you who don't know, is 1 red green for an enchantment, and it says creatures you control can't be countered, which is really good for a creature deck. I don't see any downside to that personally. But then the rest of the text is non-token creatures you control have riot. And that basically means when that creature enters the battlefield, and it will enter the battlefield because it's uncounterable, you can either give it haste, or a +1/+1 counter. Now, the reason that I like this card, and the reason that I think that splashing red or going red-green rather than green-blue is kind of good for Merfolk, is it kind of gives us access to red damage spells or red base removal. So that's like Skewer the Critics and Banefire and all those types of cards. But also, it helps keep resiliency against board wipes. So like, let's say somebody Kaya's Wraths us, then if you kind of have them closer, like to 10 life or 8 life or something like that, you're able to go drop a creature, give it haste, drop another creature, give it haste, drop a third creature, give it haste, bam, swing in. And with a lot of our creatures, they're already getting their own counters, either via Deep Root Elite or by exploring themselves. So oftentimes you can give them haste and they can get their own counters on top of that. So sometimes you're able to swing in for 3 to 5 damage, and sometimes even that's just enough on its own to knock over the opponent.
I like this card quite a bit. To be honest with you, splashing, given the current lands available in Standard, is not that hard. So, like, if you really felt like I like this effect a lot, I want to splash it in blue-green, you could do it. You could swing it.
Yeah, you could just go Teamer, and now honestly, that kind of gives us a little bit of space for like Deep Root Champion, because it kind of adds to the non-creature spells that we have to cast. As well as, like I said, just damage-based removal is kind of helpful to just kind of throw in an extra Banefire in there just to help finish off.
Or some lava coils just to like deal with drakes and like
Exactly.
annoying flyers.
Yeah, Lava Coil is a great card. There's the red-green split card that I can't think of off the top of my head that I've been running one of. It deals 6 damage to a flyer, or it's a +4/+2 and trample for a creature. That I've been running instead of Lava Coil.
Let's pull up the Gruul cards and see, because that does sound pretty spicy.
I've just been running it as a one of, but basically, in my last stream, it's shown up every once in a while, and it's been super relevant.
It's called Collision Colossus.
That's it.
Okay, that's pretty spicy.
Yeah. So one half is deal 6 damage to a flyer, and the other half is give a creature +4/+2, and it's kind of, I mean, obviously it's a modal spell, so you can do one or the other. But like I said, it deals with a Drake. It deals with a lot of pesky things.
Deals with what?
Yeah, I mean, 6 damage to a flyer. It deals with Nif Mizzet. It deals with the new Angel that just came out. That's enough damage to really push, kill that one thing that you can't get through. And in a pinch, it's also just a pump spell, as at instant speed, which is really great. So I think that we've done enough discussion about this, about our honorable mentions. Let's go ahead and go into the actual like Merfolk cards and the actual blue-green cards. So the first card, I mean, I didn't put these in any particular order. It was basically just the order that I saw them, and I just pulled them in. So the first card that we have here is Zegana, Utopian Speaker, which is 2 green-blue for a 4/4 Merfolk Wizard. So Zegana Utopian Speaker has, when Zegana Utopian Speaker enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. And it also has adapt 4 for 4 green and a blue. Now, we're going to say what adapt means now. I don't think there's any other cards that matter that we have on here. But we won't refer to it any further by the rules text. But adapt is basically, if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it, where that number is equal to its adapt number. So in the case of adapt 4, it would be +4, put 4 +1/+1 counters on that creature. So in Zegana's case, that's 4 green blue to put 4 +1/+1 counters on her. So, based off of your initial impressions and what you've seen so far, what do you think about Zegana?
So I think Zegana is a great curve topper. So there's 2 types of Merfolk decks that I've been kind of playing around with in Standard of late. One of them is more tempo-centric build that we'll get into later because Sagana doesn't quite fit into that one. But the other is a +1/+1 counter-centric build where you're playing all 8 of the Explore creatures, so 4 Branchwalker or 4 Jade Light Ranger. You're playing Deep Root Elite. You'll be playing another of the cards that we'll be mentioning later on called Benthic Biomancer. And Sagana slots in nicely as a curve topper for that sort of deck because chance if you're 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop can all get +1/+1 counters. And in that case of that deck, you can. It's basically Super Silvergill in the sense that instead of getting a 2/1, you get a 4/4, but you get a similar effect. And if you happen to be flooding, you get to make it massive and just punch through most things.
And I think, like you said, there's kind of two different versions of Merfolk and Standard. There's the version that cares more about +1/+1 counters than cares about evasions. But I think that it's kind of safe to say that most versions of Merfolk are at least playing Branchwalker and Deep Root Elite. So those are kind of it's not uncommon for there to be.
So there's a list that I'm going to talk about a little later. So this one came from another user in the Fish MTG Discord named Stoneheart, which actually has cut the Deep Root Elite lately because it hasn't needed it. It's an interesting list. We'll talk about it a little later.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And so just having it as, like you said, as a curve topper and kind of like a utility creature to just draw a card randomly. And then the thing that I like about it, like you said, in the decks that really care about +1/+1 counters, this is like a pseudo Crater Hoof. It gives all the creatures trample. So sometimes like that's just enough to break a board stall. But even then, like if at the last moment you have nothing to spend your mana on, you can dump a bunch of counters on this thing and send it in. It's honestly not a bad card. I think
it's pretty good.
I think that it was a little under received compared to a lot of other cards from the set, but I think that it actually has been performing fairly well, at least in my testing. And I look forward to playing this card a lot more.
Yeah, it's not flashy, but everything it does is like above average. It's like good body for the mana cost. You get a good ETB. If the ETB has some deck building constraints, but their deck building constraints we were operating under anyway, so it's not that big a deal. And you get a nice little mana sink, and an 8/8 Trampler on its own is no joke. Like this will get you out of some attrition games where it's the last thing to stick, and then all of a sudden you're just wailing with an 8/8 and they have to find an answer.
Yeah, also because it's a Merfolk, it gets bumped by a Miscaller, so like that, I mean, just having a 5/5 or a 6/6, is, I mean, a 4/4 for 4 is already great. But then once you put in factor in Lords and Deep Root Elites, that's you're looking at a sizable body, and for 4 mana, what else could you expect?
Yeah, it's a pretty good deal.
Also draws you a card, so bigger Silvergill. So then I think that one is pretty high on our list. The next one, probably not so much, unfortunately, is Combine Guildmage. Do you want to go ahead and read Combine Guildmage for us?
Sure. So Combine Guildmage is a 2/2 for a blue and a green, and it's a Merfolk wizard, and it has 2 abilities. You can pay 1 in a green and tap it, and this turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Or you can play 1 in a blue and tap it and move a +1/+1 counter from target creature you control onto another target creature you control. And this card has one major flaw. Both of the abilities require tapping.
Yep.
It's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone would disagree with you that basically the flaw is you can't use it the turn it comes into play. There's basically no way that a Merfolk deck would have the ability to give a creature haste, unless you're playing Teamer with Rhythm of the Wild, but that's putting yourself under so many deck building constraints that I don't think it's worth it in any capacity. Yeah, I think this card is good and limited, but outside of limited, you're not going to see it played very often.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to. It's a 2-drop with upside and limited, and it's just a little bit too slow for constructed.
especially with all these phoenixes and all the green black removal decks. It's really hard to have the stick and matter in a standard playable deck. So the next one I think is the card we'll probably talk the most about, and that is
Ooh,
Benthic
babe.
Biomancer. So Benthic Biomancer costs blue for a Merfolk Wizard Mutant and it's a 1/1. It has an ability, 1 in a blue, adapt 1. But it also has some additional text. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Benthic Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card.
Ooh, baby, this is the one. People kind of gave this card a bit of a lukewarm reception, or at least it received a lukewarm reception in some circles. But this card is just really fundamentally solid. It's good on its own in the sense that Merfolk across all formats is kind of used to having 1/1s for one. That's kind of the going rate. This is a 1/1 for one with upside in the sense that it can become a 2/2 if you have some dead mana. Furthermore, Merfolk in all formats has always made good use out of drawing extra cards and looting effects. One of the biggest problems this deck faces is mana issues. Either screw or flood. Like you will lose games because you didn't draw enough lands or you drew too many lands. Any consistency fixers like this one have a huge amount of value because if you draw your 6 land, you pitch it, and if you draw something live, it basically became draw card because the land didn't matter. Or an excess Aether Vial in Modern or Legacy, you pitch it, you basically drew a card.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think that this card received a much lower expectation or a much colder reception than I thought it should. This card is something that number one, it picks up benefit from lords, so Island Walk and Pump Effects. It loots just like you said. So when you're late in game, and you need to get to something better than a land or a vial, or maybe like even a late game spreading seas can sometimes be like if you hit your third spreading seas, you're kind of like, this is really not where I need to be at this point in the game. You can kind of just pitch it and get something else. So I think Benthic Biomancer is really great for standard and modern. I think honestly in Legacy though, we already have the looter scooter, so I don't think that
Yeah, and
Benthic.
Legacy it's a little bit shakier ground. I mean, I'm not discounting the possibility of running it out there. The prospects are a little bit shakier.
Oh, believe me, I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna test it anyway because that's my purpose in the Merfolk community is to test these little things out. But I think that honestly, Benthic Biomancer can kind of help get you out of a scrape that you possibly couldn't get out of prior. And that's kind of one of the things about Merfolk, especially in modern, is we're kind of a tool case deck where we have cards that deal with certain things. Like Merfolk Trickster deals with a lot of creatures in the air, and it deals with Termagoyf. And then we have different lords, when we need them, and we have Master of Waves, as we discussed earlier, and all those cards kind of get us out of different spots that we against different matchups. And so our big problem is sometimes not having the card we need at the moment we need to win the game. And so Benthic Biomancer can help you dig a turn, but also kind of gives you a body. So even just being a 2/2, once you have a lord or two in play, it's a 3/3 or a 4/4 that's unblockable. Like that's a relevant body. I mean, that's better than Curse Catcher for sure.
Yeah, it's just curving out in a creature deck is usually important. We've at least I have adapted my list to do without it because I've not felt that Curse Catcher or Mistcaller have been doing the job for me. But if I can curve out, I will, and this helps me curve out.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's part of the reason why Ben, we'll call him Ben from now on. That's kind of the nickname he's assumed. Uh, Ben has kind of people look at the modern metagame right now, and they see Arclight Phoenix decks, they see Dredge, and they see lots of graveyard intensive decks that Vengevine, all that fun stuff, and they go, oh well, obviously Mistcaller is the best call for the meta. And while I will agree that Mistcaller is better against those decks than Benthic Biomancer is on average, I think Ben has a higher average floor. So if you look at just the two cards in a vacuum next to each other, obviously, Mistcaller is going to be super good against decks where creatures are going to be coming out of the graveyard. But basically, in every other situation, I would rather have Ben.
Yeah,
Like,
because the problem is that the floor for Mistcaller is Merfolk of the Pearl Trident.
yeah,
And Merfolk of the Pearl Trident is not a very good Magic card.
no. And obviously, Curse Catcher kind of falls in that as well. But honestly, on average, I would still rather have Ben. And I think the problem where people saw Benthic Biomancer and looked at it and went, is basically just an effect of where Modern is right now. And I think in a year, people won't be playing a Merfolk deck without Ben in the main.
They'll be
Like,
like, why would we ever doubt this card?
it's the same thing with Master Waves. When Master Waves came out and everyone looked at it and was like, oh, it costs 4. Like when are we ever getting to 4? You know, you can't put a vial to 4. Like, why would we ever play this card? And now it's just the 4 of in basically every single Merfolk deck that ever plays it.
And now we have 4 Master Waves and we have 2 Bensers in the sideboard going like 6/4 drops, come at me.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I think Ben is here to stay. I think that, and listen, that may be hyperbolic, but I'm willing to die on that hill. I think Ben's going to be around. I've already got my playset in MTGO. I'm ready to test out Ben.
Same. And I think the only thing that has really the only question really is kind of like what gets cut. And we've faced this question before. Like Merfolk Trickster was obviously a card we had to play, but we always had to figure out cuts. Like, all right, I got to take something out. What's it going to be? But we will find the cut for Ben, and I think he's going to be good. And I think he's already been good. So in the Fish MTG Discord, the community has been abuzz about Ben for the last couple of days. Merfolk Joe, another figure in the community, has already taken him out for a spin and is doing really well from what he says.
Merfolk Joe is also somebody we have to get on the show here pretty soon.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you can get him.
Oh yeah, no, we've been in talks. It's just more of scheduling conflicts than anything. But Merfolk Joe's great. Check out his videos on YouTube. I think he's youtube.com/merfolkjoe. The one clarifier that I want to put out for Ben, at least in standard. So now this happened to me on the pre-release event, and there came a time where I had a board full of Merfolk and no cards in hand. Now, if you activate Kumena and you put a bunch of counters on, you put a counter on all of your creatures, you will draw a card and then you will promptly discard it. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying that it should be unexpected that would happen, but it's just something to think about. You will throw cards away into your own graveyard if you activate Kumena in that fashion. So
Ben will mill you 1.
Yeah, it will mill you 1. If that's a problem, then guess what? You probably already have enough Merfolk and you can draw a card and then put counters on everything and then have some card selection. That's kind of a way around that kind of weird loophole because that counter ability on Ben happens whenever a counter is put on him, not only when he adapts.
And it's also not a May trigger, so you don't get to decide that to decline. It just happens.
Yeah, that it will happen no matter what. So just be prepared for that. I hope that people won't make the same mistakes that I did, but I make the mistakes and then I explain why I made a mistake on stream so that you guys hopefully don't make those same mistakes that I do. Go forth into your local metas and don't make my mistakes. The last Merfolk in this set. Do you want to read this one, Roland? I don't think you'll have to read for very long.
Yeah, sure. It's Coral Commando. It's a 2 and a blue, but 3/2 Merfolk Warrior with no other further rules text.
It's a case. It's a case like Saltwater Stalwart that I was like, this is such a good name for a Merfolk card. Why did they waste it on such a bad card?
Yeah. At least Saltwater Stalwarts has the somewhat of a distinction in that it was playable in Ixalan Limited. It's like you could run a 2/5 out there in a blue-green Merfolk deck and not feel terrible about yourself. If you end up with Coral Commando, chances are your draft went horribly wrong.
Well, Saltwater Stalwart was from the Battle Bond set.
Oh, I'm thinking of Headwater
Yeah,
Sentries.
you're
My bad.
thinking of Headwater Sentries, which was just a vanilla 2.5. Saltwater Stalwart at least looted when it connected, but it was still like,
Two
it
four
was,
for
it was like
four.
a 2.4 for 3 or something. Basically, good and limited, but everywhere else.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the case with Coral Commando. It's a 3-2. It's fine and limited. I mean, it's fine. You'll pick it kind of late in your deck, and you'll be about it.
Yeah.
I
You'll shrug your shoulders and like, at least my token Merfolk is here.
Yeah, exactly. And it has great art. If that matters to you, I don't really see this being a big deal in any Merfolk deck. Moving on. So we're going to talk about a land, and I think this is actually really big for the Merfolk deck in helping us be, being able to curve out better, being able to have our colors, on time, and that is Breeding Pool. Now, Breeding
Yep.
Pool is a forest and an island at the same time. For those of you who didn't know about the shocklands, all the shocklands have dual land types, and they enter the battlefield tapped unless you pay 2 life. So, Breeding Pool is amazing in basically every format that it's in, uh, as well as all the shocklands. They're all about the same. But here in Merfolk, we're discussing Breeding Pool because those are the colors that you're likely to be playing in Standard. So I wanted to ask you about this because we had John Victor on episode 44,
Okay.
and he was talking about his Standard Merfolk list. And one of the things that he was discussing in his list was the fact that when Breeding Pool would enter Standard, he wasn't going to run Unclaimed Territory anymore. Basically, for the reason that it doesn't grant us any special abilities beyond tapping for the colors that we need for our Merfolk. And basically, it constrains the mana for non-creature spells. And I kind of wanted to see where you fit in this on the scale of using Unclaimed Territory versus Breeding Pool. Now, I know that you probably will use Breeding Pool on top of Unclaimed Territories, but I just, I
Yeah.
wanted to hear
So
your input.
so the argument for no unclaimed territories is a somewhat interesting one. I don't think I won't do it, but I don't think it's an argument that's without merit. So the thing about it is, there are builds of Merfolk out there that like actually lean decently hard on non-creature spells. Some non-Merfolk creatures will actually get to one later on in the discussion, I believe, or yeah, we will get to one later on in the discussion. But the fact of the matter is that two of our best Merfolk are Jade Light Ranger and Merfolk Trickster. Merfolk Trickster is going to ask you for blue blue on turn 2. Jade Light Ranger is going to ask you for green green on turn 3. And Unclaimed Territory just makes getting there so much easier. So I get that, it kind of constrains your deck building a little bit, and it's kind of an uninspiring land in the sense that it only taps for Merfolk, but the power level, like the power level of Trickster and Jade Light Ranger makes it still worth running for me. And it also depends, like I'm willing to test a list that only runs 2 unclaimed territories instead of the full 4 because I have better true blue-green fixing as opposed to fake blue-green fixing, and therefore has a little bit more leeway for those non-creature spells. But if you're looking to like splash a creature, like for example that Biomancer's Familiar I was talking about at the top of the show, maybe you just bite the bullet and you name the unclaimed territory on that creature's type, like mutant. It'll still cast Ben.
Yeah, and honestly, that kind of speaks more to Ben than it does to Unclaimed Territory. But it does kind of help with a lot of common other Merfolk types like Wizard, or
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of Shamans as well that are in Merfolk. So if you're leaning towards if you're a more green leaning Merfolk deck, then you can name Shamans and kind of splash into more Shaman cards. But I agree with what you're saying. Basically, just that because we have 8 dual lands in effect in Standard, we don't have to rely as much on Unclaimed Territory because Unlike Cavernous Souls, we don't get an extra benefit. We just get, yeah, it's either one, and that's it. um,
So you have the choice. You can either go for the buttery smooth Merfolk only mana, or you can like run a couple more basics, trim on the unclaimed territories. I wouldn't cut them all together, but like cutting to 2 seems fine.
yeah.
And then like diversify your card suite a little bit.
Oh yeah, and obviously that's only for standard. I don't think that you would ever run unclaimed territory in modern unless you're humans.
Unless you're doing 5-color stuff, there's really not much point to it.
Yeah. So breeding pool gets an A+ from us, I think. Just
Yes,
great in standard, great in every format that
absolutely.
it's in.
I mean, when they announced that they were coming back to Ravnica, I knew, and like the guilds that were gonna be in the first expansion, Guilds of Ravnica, it's like, all right, we need to make it to the second one so we can get our breeding pools and our mana can stop being gnarly.
Yeah. No, I
So
don't even think we did a review for the first Ravnica set. I don't even know what it's called. We just, it was like there's nothing
Guilds of
here.
Ravnica.
Yeah, okay.
Just we have to wait for the second one. We
Yeah.
all know.
I think collectively as a community, we just, like you said, we just kind of shrugged and just was like, all right, we'll just have to wait, and kind of shuffled our cards a little bit. Oh, excuse me. So the next card that I have listed here is, we actually have 2 split cards. So the first one that I have here is repudiate and replicate.
Mm-hmm.
So repudiate is hybrid Simic. So that is green or blue. And that half says counter target activated or triggered ability. The second half is replicate, 1 green blue, and it says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. So I want to hear your thoughts on this card, because this is a very unique card. But before we get into that, this is not like the original split cards from Dragon's Maze, where you could cast one or the other or both. In this case, you have to cast one side or the other side.
Yeah, so it's like the split cards in original Ravnica and other expansions.
Exactly.
Dragon's Maze is actually the exception to the rule.
Yeah, so if you're familiar, Dragon's Maze split cards had an ability that said fuse, and basically that meant that you could do both at the moment of casting it. So you could cast both sides at the same time. Here, and as in other sets except for Dragon's Maze, it's one or the other.
Yeah, so Repudiate is an interesting little card in the sense that like it does something that you don't often see, but it just costs too much to do it. Because here's the thing, most activated and triggered abilities are in addition to the permanent in question. So you're not trading a 1-for-1 unless the ability in question requires a sacrifice effect or some other type of resource trade. You're usually kind of like, so for example, let's say you're using Repudiate to counter Grim Lobomancer trigger, where they pay red, they tap, you counter it. The problem is you countered the ability, but the Grim Lobomancer is still on the table. And 2 mana is a little bit much to pay for that sort of effect. It has some neat corner cases here and there, but to put this in perspective, this is basically a 2 mana version of Stifle, which is a legacy legal card that only costs 1 mana. And even Stifle sees fringe play, so I'm not feeling it a whole lot.
Yeah, and I'm sure at some point we'll have you back on to talk about Swolefolk in the future. But kind of one of the big selling points of going into green is being aggressive. But the thing is like your interaction basically almost always had to be at 1 mana.
That's right.
Because you're basically casting you have to be casting a creature every turn for your deck to be sufficient. And so it's like if you get to a point where you have to hold up 2 mana to counter an ability that doesn't remove a threat from the board, like you're in trouble. Like this is not a card that you want to be playing. Even in standard, I think this is bad.
Yeah, it's just there are not enough dangerous abilities that require the sacrificing of the permanent in question for this to see play.
Exactly. And now for the other half, the replicate, I wanted to ask because I was running quasi duplicate and standard before this set, which I thought was actually really great because I mean it costs one blue, obviously not even calling into question the green, so that kind of helped out with before the set, and we had breeding pool to help our mana be a little bit smoother. But it was a clone effect that also
Yep.
let us pitch a land later to clone a lord or whatever again, and that kind of helped smooth out draws by hitting either a Silvergill Adept or a Branch Walker or a Jadelight Ranger. So what does Replicate do that Quasi Duplicate didn't already do?
Well, what it does is that it makes the mana requirements easier because in a deck that's hybrid blue green, hitting one green blue is actually easier than hitting one blue blue. There are more land combinations that you can hit that include one green source and one blue source than two separate blue sources. So having it easier to cast is actually the most exciting part of this card. And
Yeah,
that, but unfortunately, you give up the smooth out draws aspect of the jumpstart.
yeah. So as I said, you could discard a land, or you could discard like a third Kumena if if you draw it. Those are ways that you could take advantage of the cards in your hand to affect the board. Um,
And this loses that, unfortunately.
yeah, basically the only plus side is having the first half of this card kind of stapled on as a corner case. And I'm not even saying that that's a great
Yeah,
upside.
it just doesn't do enough in my opinion.
Yeah, so I mean, if this is an effective that you're looking for, I think Quasi Duplicate is a little bit better. And I have run it to some success on Arena, and I mean, if you're gonna test it out, test it out on Arena, like that's kind of the place for that sort of testing, I think.
Yeah,
But I don't
agreed.
think either of these cards would see play in Modern or Legacy. Just not quite good enough.
Abs- Absolutely not.
Yeah, we already have Phantasmal Image in those in those
We
formats,
have
so
Phantasmal Image. We have Phantasmal Image, and in Legacy we have Stifle, and we don't even play it.
yeah. Yeah. So basically this is worse than both of those cards, and we don't play those cards. So, or we don't even play one of those, so there we go. So the next card, the last card on our list that we have to talk about, and we'll talk about a little bit more about some other things after this, that I think we'll see some play, is Incubation and Incongruity. Do you want to read this one?
Sure. So Incubation Incongruity is also a split card. The first half Incubation has the Simic mana requirement, so one green or one blue, and it says, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, and that's at sorcery speed. Now, Incongruity is a green and a blue instant. Exile target creature. That creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token.
So I think that this one has a little bit more legs in Eternal formats than our first split card, because as Matt, the regular co-host on the show, we haven't forgotten you, Matt. Hi, Matt. How's it going? Matt plays Tron, and one of the really big cards in Tron is
Ancient Stirring.
Ancient Stirrings. Thank you. I don't know why I blanked there. I play Tron and Pauper. I don't know what I'm doing. So Ancient Stirrings basically does the same thing except for a colorless permanent. So a land or an artifact, or an Eldrazi, basically. So Incubation basically does the same thing for us except for Merfolk. Now, as we discussed earlier, a lot of our Merfolk do very specific things. So that can be Merfolk Trickster, that can be a Lord, that can be Mara Regery, and so, or even Master of Waves, and those are all things that we need at very specific points in the game. And so I think Incubation can be good in that it helps us dig for this particular piece that we need, and also gives us a little bit of selection while choosing a piece. What do you think about the first half?
So I think it adds a little bit of selection, but +1 mana cost in Eternal formats tends to be a little bit harsh of a cost. In Legacy, I don't think it's a starter just because it conflicts with Chalice of the Void. It's a 1-drop non-creature spell that Chalice would shut off, and since Chalice is kind of integral to the Legacy deck's function, I just think it's out there. I think most of the potential for the card is in Modern, where we're kind of in the market for turn one plays, and if you're on the draw and you can get a handle of what your opponent is on, and you can slap down a turn one incubation and look for, you know, Silvergill Adept against Jund, Merfolk Trickster against Phoenix, so on and so forth. It has some legs there. What I think is going to be the problem is that there's only so many deck spots to go around, and between the advent of needing to find a spot for Ben, and I really do think you need to find a spot for Ben, and you need to have some type of non-creature of interaction with non-creature spells in the main deck in this metagame, be it Spell Pierce, Mana Leak, Deprive, something. I just don't know where the room for incubation is going to come from.
Yeah, exactly. And I plan on testing this card out as well, obviously, because that's what we do here at Fishin, so that we do all the testing and lose the games so that you can see what it looks like to have those cards in your deck. And I do agree with you. Adding that extra one can definitely cause a problem. But I will counter with, how many times have you been stuck and going, I just need a Lord. I've got a Spreading Seas down. I just need to hit the Lord, and you've got a Violet 2, and all you need is just to hit the last Lord, and you could win the game. This digs you 5 deep to hit that Lord, and again, I'm not saying that this is the answer to modern Merfolk's problems. I'm not saying that this is the savior or anything
Truth
like
be
that.
told, I don't think modern Merfolk has many problems.
No. Again, I'm not saying that modern Merfolk is bad or anything like that. We're definitely big fans of it here on the show. If you couldn't tell that already.
Yeah, and it certainly treated me very kindly, especially lately.
Yeah, I just mean that, like, there are times where it's like, this is the turn I need to win the game. And that's
Right.
with any deck. And so, like, sometimes top decking that extra Lord can be enough to push through the damage that you need. Or top decking the Master of Waves is the thing that gets you enough blockers.
Right. It rewards you in a sense to playing to your outs, because it just gives you like a better chance of hitting that specific out.
But like you said, it doesn't give us any interaction with our opponents like Spell Pierce does. But on the same token, having Spell Pierce kind of only affects the early part of the game, and sometimes late in the game, Spell Pierce can be just a dead card in your hand.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, because Spell Pierce, one of the things that has to be kept in mind is that one of the matchups where Spell Pierce shines brightest are things like Tron and control decks, which are trying to like land these big expensive bombs, which is how they flip the game on you. Like, they're just staying alive through turns 1 through 4, and then they want to be able to tap out for that Teferi, plus to hold up defensive interaction, untap with that Teferi, and then the game is over. Pierce catching that Teferi is game ending most of the time. You just they cannot recover from Pierce your Teferi. And that's pretty late in the game, because sometimes you're looking at like a turn 5 or 6 Teferi, which in Modern is late. That's pretty late.
Yeah, I agree, and honestly, that's why I have you here to talk about these cards, because those are definitely points that need to be made. Spell Pierce is definitely has its spot in Merfolk. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from using it, but that's basically what you're interacting with. Is either you can hit your creatures or you can interact with your opponent. And I'm not saying that Merfolk has any problems dealing with its own creatures, but there are kind of times where we do need to interact a little bit better with our opponents, and Spell Pierce allows us to do that.
Right. So like the trade-off that you're looking at, I think, for incubation in Modern is you're gonna have a smaller toolbox of answer creatures. So like you're either gonna have to like shave copies of Harbinger, Trickster, etc., or decide to not run one of them in order to fit incubation in. And is that trade-off worth it? I'm not sure. It probably needs to be tested. My gut feeling is no, but it might be yes.
So now I want your opinion on this while we're discussing it. I was running 2 of Peak and 2 of Spell Pierce. So my initial testing is going to be removing the peaks in favor of the incubations. Do you think that
That's fine.
I obviously know that that's taking away the information that I'm getting, but I think that that's probably the cleanest cut if you are running peak. that's probably the spot that you should test it in.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you're running peak, incubation is worth running out there and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it has a similar effect of gaining information. Obviously, you're not gaining the information from your opponent, you're gaining the information for yourself, but it does give you selection as well as
Right.
an extra body. So
Yeah.
I'd say that that's the place that you should test it.
Right. So, and I think, it's hard to quantify the value of card selection versus the value of information because one of them is hinging on what you think, and and the other is hinging on what your opponent has. So, like, these sort of things get really subjective, but on its face, I value selection a little bit higher than information.
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of on that teetering point as well. So I agree with you on that. So now the other
Now,
half is incongruity. Now,
before we get to incongruity, let me mention one point really quick
oh sure.
about peak versus incubation. Now, the one thing that I have to like really lay out as a caveat: peak is instant speed, and that's part of one of peak's major strengths, is that instant speed, weaponizing unused mana is really good. You know, having like being able to just toss that peak out there with your spare mana and then untap and being able to do like cast the thing you peeked into is really good. Incubation cannot do that, which is why while I still support testing incubation over peak, I would not be surprised if peak won out.
No, yeah, like we are saying that that is the spot that you should switch it out. We're not saying that you should immediately dismiss peak because, like you said, you could do it at the end of your opponent's end step or the beginning of your opponent's end step. And is your opponent going to counter a peak?
Probably not.
Likely not. I'm not I'm not 100% on that because obviously it's up to your opponent, but likely they're not going to counter that peak, and drawing that extra card and basically having another card going into your hopefully final turn can be pivotal to how your deck performs. So you're completely right, but it is up to how it tests in the community and all that, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, to be determined.
So the next half of this card is basically an exile effect. So now, along with testing this card in place of peak, I'm going to be running a few Botanical Sanctums as some of my my non-basic lands, just on the off chance that it's relevant. I'm not saying that I really want that to have to be relevant, but honestly, sometimes that can be a really helpful thing against things like Dredgevine, against Arclight Phoenix. I mean, there are lots of decks where sometimes you just need to get rid of that last thing.
Yeah, a hard exile effect, even if it grants a 3/3, is not the worst thing in the world. I'm more excited about it in standard than I am in modern, just because
Oh yeah,
standard Merfolk is starved for removal, and this is like hard removal. It's like, what would you rather face? A 3/3 Frog Lizard or Lyra Dawnbringer?
yeah,
I
no,
I know what I would rather face. But in modern, I can definitely see someone like jamming a couple of green sources just to make sure that the incongruity half can be taken advantage of when it is live. I'm just not sure Botanical Sanctum is the one I want.
okay. Are you looking more at Shocklands in that case?
Yeah, I'm not set on it, but maybe like a couple of Shocklands and some fetches, because the problem is I don't want Botanical Sanctum to interfere with casting Master of Waves on curve. This is why, like, in the past, some splash attempts that were attempted failed just because you still had to run Master Waves, and if draw Botanical Sanctum as your tap land, you're out of luck.
Yeah, Botanical Sanctum's your fourth land. You're just gonna put your hand down on the table
Like,
and
oh
shed one
no.
single tear.
Like, oh no.
Yeah, you'll be in a bad place. And I will have it noted that in modern, I think it's relevant in the fact that even though you're giving your opponent a 3/3, generally your Island Walk will kind of negate that 3/3 in any way, in any case. So I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying that this is the primary reason you run this card, but it does help get rid of it, something that you just cannot deal with otherwise. Like you said, Roland, it's hard removal.
Yeah, it's hard removal. You will find some cases where it is useful, and something like Harbinger can just blink the token out of existence. So Merfolk is really well suited to deal with like random ground creatures that also happen to be tokens. The token is not really a threat.
Yeah, so like with Harbinger of the Tides, like you said, just bouncing it out of existence, no problems there. All right, so that kind of wraps up the cards that we had set aside. Are there any other cards you want to talk about, Roland?
Yep, there's one card that I definitely want to talk about, and part of it makes me said that one single tier because it's not a Merfolk, but it should have been.
What
That
card
is
is that?
Frilled Mystic.
Frilled Mystic.
Frilled Mystic. So Frilled Mystic is green, green, blue, blue, 3/2 elf, lizard, wizard, and has flash. And when it enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about Frilled Mystic is because some folks in the Merfolk community, including Stoneheart, shout out to Stoneheart.
Yeah, Stoneheart. Woo.
So he's been having quite a bit of success on MTG Arena with a more tempo-oriented Merfolk list, which is running instant speed tricks on trick creatures like Merfolk Trickster, Swift Warden, in addition to like the typical Merfolk aggro shell. So it's this nice little tempo deck, and Frilled Mystic as a Merfolk would have been an amazing curve topper. Even as it is, he's still playing it and reporting good success. So imagine if it were on Tribe.
And this also kind of leans into your argument for running unclaimed territory, because you can name Wizard, and that also hits a lot of Merfolk that are in standard, like Silver Go Adept and Merfolk Trickster. But then it also helps tap for the correct mana for Frilled Mystic. And again, I do wish that this was a Merfolk. It's one of those things that even when you look at it, when you look at the art, it's like, oh, and then you read the type line, you go, oh.
Like, come on, man. Come on, man. We needed that one for standard.
You couldn't have gone Elf, Merfolk, Wizard. Come on.
Yeah. Throw us a bone here.
Or Merfolk, Lizard, Wizard. It could have been any number of those things. It could have not been a wizard. Like, let's do that.
Yeah. But anyway, the card has been really powerful. I've been testing it in standard myself as well. I've been really pleased with it just because countering a spell and getting a 3/2 at instant speed is actually really strong.
Yeah, I totally agree. Honestly, this is something that has kind of gone past me a little bit because of the preview event that we did. I kind of brewed some really janky Merfolk decks, some that you'll see this week. Getting released on YouTube, some things in Azorius and Jund and all that. But you're right. This is something that you should be looking at if you're playing Merfolk in Standard. Even though it's not a Merfolk, you should look at playing this card. Countering a spell is just so good.
Treat it like a non-creature spell. Like, think of it as a non-creature spell. Like, imagine a counter spell that gives you a 3/2 token. You would play that.
Oh yeah, no questions asked. And because of our mana right now, with both we have the shock lands and the check lands and just all the basics. This deck is already running 21 to 24 lands as it sits. You have no problems with this.
Yeah, you can pretty easily swing it.
Yeah. All right, so I think that ends our discussion. Do you have any closing arguments, Rothgar?
Just wanted to give a little bit of a spiel. I've been saying this in various platforms, so I apologize to anyone who has heard it before.
Go ahead and soapbox.
Yeah. Modern Merfolk is a defensive tempo deck. You should be playing it as a defensive tempo deck, which means against decks like Arclight Phoenix, Dredge, Burn. You play defense, you kind of get their offense, you kind of get their aggression under control, and then you flip the script on them with either a Big Lord turn or a Master of Waves. The deck works really well when you do this sort of thing.
Believe me, you don't have to fight me on this. I've said this. I think I've said that at least once or twice on the show. That a lot of people treat it as an aggro deck where you just go Lord, 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 swing, and that's fine in some situations. But in the average situation, and I think even the printing of Merfolk Trickster has helped solidify it as a deck that you should be waiting for your opponent to make the first blink, and then that's when you kind of fire off your Merfolk via Aether Vial or Flash, and that's how you should be playing it.
Right. This is a counterpuncher deck.
Yeah, believe me, I've had games in Modern where I've cast Harbinger of the Tides for 4 mana just to bounce the one last thing that I needed, and then just swung for victory, because that's how the deck should really be played. And
Flash Harbinger wins games, man.
Yeah, yep.
Nobody expects the Flash Harbinger.
All right, so let's step off our soapbox here and finish off the episode. Thank you, Roland, so much for coming on the show and filling in.
This was great.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. We'll definitely have you on again. Where can we find you on social media?
So you can find me on Discord at Rothgar13. You can find me on Facebook as Roland Fernando, and I think that's mostly it. Yeah. Oh, and in Reddit as Rothgar13.
Yeah, I was about to say you're also on the Fish subreddit, which I will give props to both you and the rest of the moderation team. I think it's one of the most welcoming places on Reddit and even Discord.
I think the community is honestly one of the competitive advantages to running this deck. Like, there's people with lots of experience who are willing to help, and people who are like willing to try stuff. You know, we have a lot of good community niches filled, and I think that's part of what keeps us afloat.
Yeah, and believe me, I've had people come to us on Twitter and all that, and they'll say like, oh, I just started playing and I wanted to pick up Merfolk, and I'm like, go to these places, because like nobody in these, you know, in the Discord or the subreddit will go, oh, I can't believe you're playing blah 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 X card, because how could you do that? You know, it'd be like, oh, well, did you play it? Did you try it? You know, what happened when you tried it? And like, people really just want to find out like we
want to see you succeed.
Yeah, and so like, there is definitely, it's a very scientific community in that fashion. It's just like, people want to know like, well, what happened when you did that? Why did you do that? You know, and so it's supportive in that fashion, and that nobody's attacking you like if you run something and maybe it doesn't stick. It's like, oh, hey, I tried this out, and these were my results. What do you all think? And then everyone else will go, I think it's pretty great. I did this and that, and it worked out pretty well for me, or vice versa. And there's at least a discussion about like why or why not a card was good. So I really do like the community for that fashion. So in that spirit, find us on the subreddit. Fish MTG is the subreddit, on Discord and the Facebook group. We're all discussing Merfolk. It's a great place to be if you aren't already there. And if you've listened to an hour of our podcast and you're not interested in Merfolk, God bless you.
Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, find us on those locations. I am on Twitter as @NotCodySmith, and the usual co-host Matt, who is in places undisclosable, is @MatthewCotto8. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is @FishcastMTG. If you have any further or longer form questions, you can email us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. Or again, anybody on the subreddit or Discord would probably gladly help you as well. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt, and our logo and stream art was done by @Ishton on Twitter. If you like what we're doing here, please rate and subscribe in the Apple or Google Play podcast app stores, as well as find us on patreon.com/fishcastmtg to support us directly. You can also find us on Inked Gaming or Teespring to get the appropriate merch from our store, and all those purchases help us directly. You can find those links in the description for this episode. Thank you again to Roland for coming on the show, and we will see you all next week.